meeting for Tuesday, July 7th. We'll call to order. Roll call, please.
Mr. Richards?
Present.
Mr. Toller?
Here.
Miss Abrams?
Here.
Mr. Westmoreland?
Present.
Mr. Duncan? Mr. Bush?
Here.
Mr. Moore?
Here.
Miss Simmons? Miss Dominguez?
Present.
I'm going to ask you if you would please join us by standing. I'm going to ask Mr. Moore if he would lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
All veterans, give a proper salute. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You may be seated. Entertain a motion to consider the board minutes from June the 16th.
I make a motion.
We have a motion to accept those minutes. We have a second from Mr. Westmoreland.
Was that Miss Dominguez or Miss Abrams?
Miss Abrams. Miss Abrams made the motion. Mr. Westmoreland seconded it.
Voting is open. Voting is closed. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. And just as a point of reference, with the mask, we obviously need to speak directly into the microphone so that our volume level can be heard appropriately. Also, that you'll notice tonight that Ms. Jenkins will be repeating our vote tally because online or watching on TV, there's no way for them to tell. If it's a unanimous vote, you'll just hear her say that the vote was unanimous. If it's not unanimous, then she will say, motion passed, voting no was Mr. Westmoreland, for instance. So that's not a way to call anybody out. That's a way of getting the record correct for our online and for our TV viewers. So with that being said, any questions? As well as out here in the audience and at the table, there's a microphone over here by the assistant superintendent. Ms. Jenkins has one at her desk as well. If someone speaks over there, please pass the mic. If someone in the audience has something to say, we will pause and let them come to the mic. We want to make sure that people at home can hear what's being said so that we're not just wasting their time or our time. All right, with that being said, item 2A, Personnel Committee meeting from July 7th.
I move to adopt the committee report and minutes as stated.
We have a motion to adopt the committee meeting. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Rose. Any discussion? All right, call for a vote.
Voting is open. Voting is closed. Motion passes unanimously.
Okay, thank you. Superintendent, would you like to introduce those?
Yes, I would, Mr. President. I'd like to first start by introducing our new assistant principals, and I'll start with Ponchatoula High School, Miss Christy Gill, and if Miss Gill would come up to the podium and you have a few minutes to address the board. Congratulations. Yes.
Superintendent Lilly, members of the board, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to serve at Ponchatoula High as an assistant principal. I've been at Ponchatoula for 24 years, so I'm very excited and blessed to move into the administrative role. I work with some amazing teachers and staff at Ponchatoula, so I've been fortunate to have the opportunity to work with them for many years. I look forward to working with Dr. Caminito and moving Ponchatoula to the next level. I think we're going to do that. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Dr. Caminita is out this week, taking a little vacation, so she would be here otherwise, and so I just wanted to say that.
We can let off them other greenways stand up back there. Go ahead, stand up. Let's recognize y'all for coming.
Do the wave. There we go.
And I worked with a lot of them when I taught there, and that is an unbelievable crew sitting right there. Congratulations, crew.
Good to have y'all.
Yes, thank y'all. Also with Sumner High School, the new assistant principal is Mr. Larry Morgan. Mr. Morgan, would you like to address the board?
Mr. Morgan is in New Mexico.
Okay. Well, that would be,
He would love to. You may speak
that
on his
would be
behalf.
hard to address the board. Go ahead, Mr. Charlie.
I did speak to him, though, and he's ecstatic about it. And like I said during the personnel meeting, we are tickled to have him at Sumner full-time. He's been working with our cadet program and doing an outstanding job, so we look forward to having him. So welcome aboard, Larry.
All right, and our next assistant principal for Hammond High School Magnet is Arnold Thomas. Mr. Thomas, if you're in the building, there you go, you can come up and address the board. Congratulations.
Good evening. First, giving honor to God, who's the head of my life, next to my family, who's in attendance here with me tonight. And last but certainly not least, Superintendent Stilly and all board members, everyone else who's in attendance. I can't put into words how excited I am for this opportunity. Blessed and thankful to come out to this district. Excited about all the new ideas and everything that I have been working with Ms. Gatos and making, improving student learning and achievement at Hammond High. I'm a very transparent person, so that goes for anyone. You need me, you need to contact me. Open door policy, please don't hesitate to contact me. And I'm looking forward to working with everyone and all the community stakeholders to make this a great product. Thank you.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you, and once again, congratulations to all of our new administrators. We look forward to working with you.
I have one more. Mr. Gary Perkins, who is our new principal at Laranja High School. Mr. Perkins has graduation tonight at Grace King, his high school that he's currently working, and is not able to make it. I don't think he's here in the audience. He had told me that he probably wouldn't be able to make it. All right. So just wanted to recognize him. Thank you, Mr. President.
Congratulations to all of them. Item 3A, consider approval to refer summary assessment revisions to Section F of the Policy Manual to the Policy Committee.
Yes, Mr. President. We actually have forethought reviewing our policy, and this is the next section that they have completed, and our district team, our leadership team has reviewed Section F, and at this time, we would like to refer it to our next policy meeting, which I think is going to be later this month.
Correct, on the 20th.
Move that to Policy Committee.
We have a motion made by Mr. Westmoreland to move that to Policy Committee, seconded by
Second.
Mr. Minguez. Any discussion? Voting?
Voting is open. Voting is closed. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Item 3B, consider approval of resolution adopting the 2019-2020 Louisiana Compliance Questionnaire as a required part of the Tangipahoa Parish School System's annual finance and compliance audit. That's a lot of words. Mr. Snotabot.
Thank you, Mr. Kohler. I'd like to read the resolution into record. A resolution adopting the 2019-2020 Louisiana Compliance Questionnaire as a required part of the Tangipahoa Parish School System's annual financial and compliance audit. Whereas the legislative auditor requires that the Louisiana Compliance Questionnaire be completed by the Tangipahoa Parish School System and adopted by the Tangipahoa Parish School Board. Whereas the questionnaire must be presented to the auditor at the beginning of the annual audit, and whereas the auditor will test the accuracy of the response to the questionnaire during the course of his audit, now therefore be it resolved that the Tangipahoa Parish School Board does hereby resolve that the attached Louisiana Compliance Questionnaire for Tangipahoa Parish School System be and hereby be adopted. Would ask that the board would adopt the questionnaire.
Okay, we hear that in form of a motion.
I make a motion to accept.
Minguez made the motion to accept.
I second it, Mr.
Second by Mr. Bush. Any questions, concerns, or discussion? Hearing none, call for the vote.
Voting is open. Voting is closed. Motion passes unanimously.
Okay, thank you very much. Item 3C, I'm going to turn it over. We do have public input on this, Ms. Dilley, but I would ask if it's okay, Mr. Michael, if you would wait till after the superintendent gives her spiel, because she may actually answer some of your questions. So, but I will not forget you, but whenever she gets through. So, the reason why we're all here is to hear what you've got to say tonight.
No, it's not.
Let me see.
I can't hear it, Mark. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Tonight, I wanted to share with you our plan for the reopening of our schools in August from the COVID-19. As you well know, our schools have been, buildings have been closed since about middle of March. And so this is our plan moving forward, and we'll have additional documents that we'll be releasing on our website and through social media before the end of the week as well. This is what I call my disclaimer page, and this is because, as you well know, things change on a daily basis, depending on the decisions of our governor and Bessie and different agencies that we're coordinating with. This plan was put together, and of course, decisions that they make may impact in some degree what we're planning to do, although we do not think that it will impact our plan much at all, but tweaks may be made as we get closer to the start of school based on these agencies that we're working with. There's a couple. I wanted to start with this slide just so everyone is clear. Teachers will report on August the 6th. They will report to their school buildings in all phases. So no matter the phase that we could potentially be in, although we're predicting or we're anticipating, currently we're in phase 2, and we believe that we may likely be in phase 2 on August the 6th. But as we get closer, regardless of the phase, teachers would report to their school buildings unless they're notified differently by their supervisor. Students would report on August the 12th, which is the following week. There will be a soft start for grade levels that will be released very soon. When we say a soft start, what we mean, and we'll talk about this more, is we would have, for instance, if I teach 3rd grade, half of my students would come on the first day, Wednesday, the 12th. The other half would come on Thursday, and then they would all come on Friday. And the reason for that soft start is because there will be lots of procedures and protocols that teachers will need to walk through with their students because of this pandemic. In addition to that, it would provide teachers an opportunity to distribute the devices, the laptops, and also to give an orientation to the students on how to access the classroom platform when they're home at any given time, if we have to resort back to a phase 1 or whatever phase we're in. So that's the reason for the soft start. You know, those of us who have had, I think, pre-K or kindergartners, you know, they have what we call a soft start, where the boys go on the first day, and then the girls go, and then they all go. And that the idea is that you have less students there, that you can get them acclimated to the environment and the protocols before everyone is there. All support employees will report as normal. Operating times, unless they're notified differently by their supervisor. So I've had many questions about, you know, I'm a bus driver, do I have a job? Yes, you'll be driving a bus. You know, support staff, if I work in the cafeteria, if I'm a custodian or whatever, yes, we will have normal operating hours and times unless things were to change on a dime, and we've got to notify our employees. These are the state requirements. I meant to add this to this slide. Excuse me. The state requirements give us the parameters of what's required to open school at any given phase. So in phase 1, anytime during the school year, the governor says we're in phase 1, these are the requirements to any kind of school that we may consider. 1, we can only have a maximum group size of 10. The young students have to maintain static groups. Older students have to maintain 6 feet distance during any transition. The physical standards for any of these phases are the same. That has to, like if there's groups outside, they have to be separated outside. Limiting the crowd entry points to the school and exit points. We have to monitor symptoms at all phases. That means temperature checks, make sure that our students and employees both are not running a temp, that we establish an area that we can isolate students if they're sick, if they run in fever, coughing, or are sick, and that we can clean and disinfect surfaces in the isolation area after the sick children have gone home with their parents. Also, the environmental cleaning, those areas that are high-touch areas, as we call them, including bathrooms, hand washing at arrival every 2 hours, which is about time you would take a restroom break anyway. Take them to the restroom, wash your hands, go to lunch, wash your hands before lunch. In the afternoon, restroom, wash your hands. That's, as a recovering teacher, that's kind of the format of the day anyway. And then, of course, if you're outside playing and using equipment and such, you may want to sanitize your hands before returning in the classroom. Now, the recommendations for reopening by the state is that adults wear a mask, and students in grades 3 and up are recommended to wear face coverings. I learned on the superintendent's call last week that the proper name is face coverings and not mask. But to maintain them to the extent possible, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about masks in a few minutes. The real kicker on this page that I think is our biggest barrier is the last one, and that's transportation. The other things are, of course, challenges, and of course, our school staff, our principals and teachers and everyone will have to ensure that they can think through their school, because every school in this parish is a different size, different setup, so they have to look at their school and determine how are they going to do these things at their school. But the big kicker for us is transportation. And so in phase 1, you can only have 25% capacity on the bus. In phase 2, you can have 50% capacity on the bus. And in phase 3, you can have 75% capacity on the bus. So I want us to think here for just a moment that, we have, roughly 20,000 students in our school system, right? Let's say 2,000 are carpool every day. Parents normally take them, pick them up. That leaves 18,000 that ride our school buses. So if we can only have half the capacity, roughly you're talking about 9,000 students can ride the bus. So what about the other 9,000 students? How are we going to transport these students to school? That's the big barrier. I was talking this morning to one of our Bessie members and was explaining this as a barrier. And we talked about some things that maybe could happen at a higher level than where we are here that could maybe assist us in increasing some of those numbers. But for the now, these are our requirements. Okay? So keeping that in mind, those requirements, this is what we fleshed out in terms of phases and what we would do. So let's take the blue column, phase 1. Of course, we're not in phase 1 right now. We're in phase 2. But if at any given time during the school year, we would resort, and the governor would say, we're in phase 1 now, then everyone would know what our plan is. And that is pre-K through 12 would be full virtual. And as you know, with the CARES Act money, it put us in a great position of being able to purchase a laptop for every student in our parish, right at $20,000. And so that would be our plan. And if you remember the slide before, we can have 25% transportation capacity and only about 10 students and a teacher in a room together with other requirements. So we would have the opportunity in phase 1 here with full virtual if we needed to pull students in for tutoring, one-on-one, additional assistance. Maybe they're struggling with the platform and the lessons and so forth. So we would have a little wiggle room right there to pull some kids in at different times to assist them. In phase 2, which is where we are now, and honestly, I can't predict the future, but I sort of anticipate that it's possible, it's pretty probable, that we will be in phase 2 when school starts. So given what I said earlier, that, basically we can transport about 9,000 students on our buses, which is, half of what we need to transport. This is the suggestion that, and this is what we feel our team, and we've gone over this and a million times, but we feel strongly that we need our littlest of children in the buildings every day. And that would be our pre-K through 6 children who really should not be left at home at all, alone. And you have to consider that our economy, parents are trying to go back to work. And so if we were to do virtual, or even if we were to do a model where they came to school 2 days a week, parents would be scrambling to find babysitters for their children on the other days. So the pre-K 6, we would like to have those students in our buildings every day, 5 days a week. Now, I can tell you that, as I said earlier, I have been on superintendent calls with our region here, our superintendents, and our neighboring districts, based on last week's conversation, are looking at having their pre-K 6, well, actually all of their students, they're looking at having all of their students pre-K through 6, all the way through 12th grade, come 2 days a week. So half of them would come 2 days a week. The other half of their pre-K through 12th grade would come 2 days a week, alternating. And then in between, they would do online. I think the disadvantage to that is while all the kids would be getting 2 days at school, our most vulnerable, I think, our most needy, our little ones, need us every day. They need a socialization. They need that one-on-one with the teacher. So what we're looking at here is pre-K 6 in the buildings. 7 through 12 would be full virtual. Students would log in virtually. Schools would have office hours where teachers could schedule students to come in for assistance, for tutoring, for if they need high-speed internet, maybe where they live, they can download certain things, but they need higher speed internet that they can't get in their rural community. But they could be scheduled to come in by their teachers at different times so that we could keep those numbers lower, and we could also try to meet the needs. One of the things that our team feels really passionate about is that we need to reevaluate. We want to do bus counts every day, starting on the first day of school, physically getting on the bus and counting kids. And based on those counts, we're thinking that we'll be able to perhaps at least get maybe 7th and 8th grade in the buildings every day. Or maybe all those grades on the building every day. So we want to reassess this and count, and then after Labor Day, which is about, I don't know, 2.5 weeks later, we think that we may be able to fold in some of these students at least 2 days a week in the buildings. But we first have to know how many students are going to ride the bus, and that's kind of a hard thing to guess. So that's what we're looking at phase 2. Phase 3 would be pre-K through 8. We upped it to 8th grade, traditional model, and then 9 through 12, a blended, because on phase 3, if you remember, you have the 75% capacity on the buses. Although we will make every effort to try to get all those kids in the building, all those students in the building in the phase 3. As a reminder, at the very bottom, it says regardless of the phase, 1, 2, or 3, doesn't matter. We will offer a blended model where kids can go 2 days and they can be home, or a full virtual model to support families to make the best decision for their child in any of these phases. In all of these phases, the work is not optional. The work is graded by those teachers teaching the courses or in the classroom, and attendance is taken. So I know that there's some parents that's thinking, you know, I'm going to homeschool my student, or I don't want to send them to school. You have an option here in Tangipahoa Parish. If you feel strongly about that, you can sign up for the virtual model in any of these phases, and you can transition out of those blended or virtual models during the school year, depending on, you know, how your child's progressing there.
Melissa, can I stop you for a minute? Robin, I've received information that the live feed is not working.
Okay.
So parents aren't being able to see or hear what you're saying. Is it? Okay. I was just making sure. Thank you.
Thank you. These are the procedures, the state procedures and guidelines that are recommended. 3 key principles: hand washing, of course, wearing a face covering, I'm going to talk about that over here, and the social distancing. For social distancing, you know, in phase 2, it's a group of 25, and static groups means they don't mix with other groups at the school. That unit stays together and transitions together. They're, you know, minimal transitions to large group. You promote parent pickup and drop off to assist with limiting the buses, and that's one of the things that's going to help us get more of those other kids on the bus, is if those other 9,000 that we need to transport, if there's a parent out there that can, you know, it's feasible, you have transportation, it's feasible for you to transport your children in phase 2, it would be very helpful, because we can actually get more students on buses to try to get them to school in our 7 through 9. We want the adults to wear masks. Students in 3rd grade and up should wear a face mask covering. During transition times and outside of the classroom and other times when you cannot social distance. So one of the questions about the mask, and I mean this could change because I know that Bessie is actually having this discussion next week about potentially making it a mandate. So, you know, we'll see how that's going to work out. But, you know, our thought process is if you're in the transition areas, you're going down to the hall, you're going to the restrooms, you wear your mask. Going to the playground, wear your mask. If you're in the classroom and you're adhering to the social distancing, you can remove your mask. in the classroom. The teacher can remove her mask, stay in this 3 to 6 feet away from the students. And the students, if a teacher goes over and is working one-on-one with the student, they both need to put their mask on.
If there's not enough room in that room for
Right.
that. Because some rooms, 25 people, you
Yes.
can't.
Well, right. We're asking our teachers to really look at their rooms, and that's one of the things that our principals are going to work with them on, to find a way that we can, you know, the latest article out by the American Association of Pediatricians is 3 to 6 feet. So if you think about a school desk, I mean, it's 2 feet, right? I mean, the top of it. So if you just put a space about a foot or so in front of you and the other student, that's going to space you out enough. So we'll have to work with our principals and our teachers around the social distancing piece. But I think we need to be, protect our employees and our teachers, but we also need to be reasonable in thinking about the social distancing and the mask. Monitoring of symptoms, we will be required to check for fever in the beginning of the day. If a student is experiencing any kind of fever, cough, or shortness of breath or sore throat, there will be a sick room, so to speak, or isolation room, and the parent will be called to pick them up. Students are asked to stay home if they're sick. We will assess them on arrival, and we'll establish an area. And then, of course, the cleaning part of this, high-touch areas, desks, doorknobs, cleaned before and after each group. If you have different sets of kids using doorknobs and things like that, hand washing on arrival every 2 hours, before eating, after outdoor play, and then also the water and the restroom breaks, having plans for that to address that particular area. This is all from just straight from the Department of Education, I think. Additional guidelines is that we encourage our students to enter and exit single file lines to enable physical distance and space out, you know, like you go in the stores and you checking out, they tell you to stay 3 to 6 feet away. Visitors will not be allowed in the school buildings except if there's a circumstance that they really need to be in there. We need to limit the number of adults entering the building. They should wash their hands and sanitize their hands prior to coming into the building. Field trips will be discontinued until further notice. And athletic activities and those cheer dance, those kinds of things, we will base that on the recommendations of the High School Athletic Association. Band and vocal music may resume in Phase 3. That's part of the state guidelines with physical distance recommendations in effect. And one of the things that we need to make clear tonight is, you know, we're trying to figure out how to get 18,000 students on buses that are half-filled. Every year we have about 2,000 special request forms that we process, you know, where a student is dropped off at a different place, which means they're on a different route. And we, at this time, during Phase 2 and 3, cannot grant special transfer requests because it impacts the routes and the capacity that we have on the routes. And so it's just, you know, something that we can't grant during this time. Once we can get past the Phase 2 and 3 and some sort of normalcy, we're happy to process those requests.
Is that like the daycare request?
Yeah, well, like, you know, if I need my child dropped off at a different place, you know, it could be grandmother's house or...
But a lot of those like a daycare.
Could be,
after
yeah.
school. So we would not be doing those?
Not with 50% capacity. So I think that, you know, we would be potentially putting a student off that's normally on that route if we did something like that.
Right.
Unfinished learning. Now, we all know that since March, you know, our kids have been out of school. They missed, you know, April and May and part of March. And so what will happen is each school will use a screener or diagnostic during the first few weeks of school. We will analyze those results. We will communicate the child's readiness with the parents. We'll create a learning plan for pre-K to 8, K to 8, and graduation plans for the high school. And we will address unfinished learning gaps with curriculum-specific guidance. And I have a chart here. These are the diagnostics that we will use in the beginning to find out where the gaps are. And so you'll see kindergarten and ELA, we're using the DRDP-K, and you can go down the list. We've identified these. And also these are all things that students can take on their Chromebooks, whether they're at home or school. So if for some reason, we had to resort to a phase 1 in our elementary schools by August, then they could actually do some of these assessments on their Chromebook at home. And the teacher could access their results and know their gaps and know that there needs to be some prescriptive things done. Also here are the instructional resources to address the unfinished learning. And these are just additional resources that we have that we will utilize to fill the gaps that students have in terms of their diagnostic assessment. We have I think it's about 40 pages. This is not the latest document, but it looks like this. And this document has a lot more detailed information. Like, for instance, what do you do if a teacher tests positive for COVID? What's the procedure? What's the procedure if a student in a classroom tests positive? Lots of things in terms of transportation in all the phases, the food service. There's a section on food service and what that would look like in terms of serving at the schools per the guidelines. We'll also have information in there about the soft start, of course, like I had talked about earlier, where we can help students acclimate to the procedures and issue devices and provide orientation on how to use those Chrome devices to access instructional materials. And then also all of the protocols around, employee and student safety, as well as very prescriptive schedules around cleaning at the school. And all of that will be included in the return to school detailed plan, which we will post it on our website for everyone to access. We can push it out on Facebook. We will also email it to all of our employees, so they will have that. And a lot of the questions about, I call it in the weeds questions, which are like, what do you do if this happens, will be answered here. In addition to that, we will develop a frequently asked questions document. I know that, I know Mr. Toller has quite a few questions about, I call it in the weeds questions, but we can develop a frequently asked questions document. We can keep it updated by this document so that families, employees, and parents can go on and ask questions, and we can make sure that they're all getting accurate. We did that for several things. I think the learning models and different things like that, and it was very helpful in parents understanding more about the learning options. So we will do the frequently asked questions document as well. Here's I think one of the last slides. What can parents do to prepare for next year? It's like it's the new year, like New Year's in January, but it's the August. So one thing, if I'm a parent and I had school-age students, I would, work to try to find a face covering for your child. The state strongly recommends it in grades 3 through 12. And it's, something that they could definitely wear during transitions in the common areas, outside where they're, in the hallways, restrooms, and things like that, and in the classroom if they can't social distance. Purchase school uniforms, same as always. Purchase school supplies. We have waited on our school supply list. We had our principals along with our supervisors really work to make sure that the supplies are supplies that can be used no matter the model or whatever. And so that was the holdup on those. We were really evaluating those, and they are recommended for parents to purchase for their child's classroom. And, just something that parents can do is if you're in a situation and you have a car and you're able, meaning, you can get your child to school and back during phase 2, that would really help to try to transport students who do not have a vehicle or their parent cannot transport them because of their job. So I think we can all help each other if we can do that, and we encourage that. And we'll do those bus counts starting on day 1, physically counting how many students are on the bus for half capacity, and then that will help us determine how we can add either just 7th and 8th grade or 2 days for the 7th through 12th grade. So we really want to try to get them included at least 1 or 2 days a week in phase 2. The CDC guidelines, water fountains will be turned off, and so, because you know what kids do. They go up and they put their mouth all over the thing, and they like to play in it, and the little ones. So we're encouraging parents to send a water bottle, like take a bottle, freeze some water in it, send it to school with their child, and to reach out to their school's administrator if they have questions. We also have our questions at tangischools.org, which we're going to be putting out a press release following this meeting. And we ask parents and employees to send questions relative to the reopening to the questions at tangischools.org, and we will do the frequently asked questions document and make sure that their questions are answered.
Can we go back to that slide, Cindy? I know you're going to probably get questions, but this first one, this wording about the state strongly recommends.
Which one?
The first one. Secure a face covering
Yes.
for your child. Okay, so the state strongly recommends. What are we doing as a parish? Are we making it mandatory?
No.
And our face mask or shields will be okay. So, in other words, if I'm seeing the state strongly recommends it, then all of our 3 to 12 kids can go without it because we're not making it mandatory.
At this time, there is, as I said earlier, Bessie is, and they have this, I think, on their meeting agenda next week to talk about some mandates that are not recommended but required. And so we can see what happens there. Our position is that it's recommended. I do recommend it for the older students, especially during transition. Personally, I don't like to see a child sit in the classroom for 8 hours with a mask on, especially if they're social distanced from others. I think for some it can, be difficult to breathe and so forth, and can cause more harm actually. So we're going to have to take the guidance, but it is not mandated. It is not. It's recommended.
At this time.
At this time.
And I would like to
refer
bring
back
out,
to my disclaimer on that first slide.
and I would like to bring out that same point. This all could change tomorrow.
Yeah.
So any parent, I'll give my spiel later in the meeting, but do not listen to rumors. Look at our website. Look at this report that you'll be getting. Go online, check it out. And that's where you need to get your information from. Mm-hmm. As they say, from the horse's mouth in Miss Dilly, you're a beautiful horse, but it's coming from your mouth tonight. And that's who we're going to follow in this parish.
Additional resources, these are just links to the state site and different things on Corona and so forth. But I do want to go back. Oh, I shouldn't have done that. I want to go back to the phases. And so phase 2, this is what it would look like if we're in phase 2 in August. So this is what we talk to our teams about. It's kind of like, when you're playing basketball and you start the game in a zone and you're losing, and the coach blows the whistle and calls you over there timeout, says, all right, we're doing man-to-man. And within that fast, they switch. And this is how, very fluid, and this is how we have to think about. Or sometimes the coach might call them over and say, okay, you're playing a zone, but you two playing, I want you on that point guard. Don't let them out of your sight. So, you have to be able to switch and be fluid in this time of this pandemic. Because, we could change, we could maybe we will be at 3 in August. And if we are, that's the plan. At any time we revert to 1, that's the plan. So everyone can be clear about what we're doing. I don't think that anything, because really what dictates this is the transportation issue. And I don't think unless they change the recommendation, or actually it's a requirement, it's not a recommendation, about 50% capacity. Unless they change that at the state level, then this is it. And so that would be the only thing that could happen at the state level if they change the requirement, not the recommendation, that we have 50% of our students on the bus in phase 2, or we have 75% in phase 3. So, as far as the mask, there could potentially be some state things that happen that mandate it. But this is pretty, I think, solid. And I think parents can, and teachers and employees can plan accordingly. And I'll take any questions.
Okay, I know we have a lot of questions. Before we get to the questions, though, I'd like to give you just a chance to catch your breath and let Mr. Michael Saucer, Soche, if you want to come up and do your public comment right now, that'll give the superintendent a chance to catch her breath.
I think she addressed most of my concerns. The transportation, I know is going to be an issue. Like the 7th and 8th grades on up, are they going to be in virtual class all day? Is that the plan?
Yeah, 7th through, well, in phase 2, 7 through 8, 7 through 12 will be virtual. But if you're a high school bus driver, we're going to have to use you to help transport the little kids, the pre-K to 8. So, your route could be a little different in phase 2.
All right. No, I got 3 kids. So one of them's in 8th grade, one of them's in the 6th grade, one of them's in the 4th grade. So the younger ones will be going to school 5 days a week.
Up to 6th grade.
Up to 6th grade. And then one that's in the 8th grade, he will be at home online the whole day.
Yes. Well, not sitting in that's one of the things I need to address.
You want to use the microphone, Ms. Dillon?
Yes, but what I would say on that is, after Labor Day, we want to reassess the number of students on the bus, because we think we may be able to fold in the 7th and 8th graders to come to the school site. But we were hesitant to start that way because we're worried about the numbers on the bus, because we are required to have only 50%. So 8th grade would start the year off with online. And one of the questions that people have about online is they'll say, well, does my child have to sit at a computer for like 7 hours? And so the answer to that is no, because they get the assignments done and the work done for that day, because there's a schedule. There is a schedule. And there's certain things that they're expected to get done that day. And so they may finish in 2 hours. Or they may want to work an hour and take a break and come back and work another hour. But it's not like sitting in the classroom for 7 hours if you're online, full virtual.
So what about if they need assistance during the time that they're doing?
Right. So on one of the slides, I think it was the one that has the phases on there, that for grades 7 through 12, even though they're full virtual, the teachers will be, communicating with those individuals, and we'll have like office hours, so students can be scheduled to come up to the school and sit down in front of a teacher and, like maybe they're having trouble with the algebra piece, or or maybe they're just having trouble figuring out the platform or whatever, they can assist them, and it can be scheduled by the teacher to come in and do that during phase 2.
I mean, some of the kids, I'm just talking about mine only.
Mr. Michael,
Oh, I'm sorry.
the board comments is to address the board. If you have questions of us, let us know, and we can, but
okay.
it's not a one-on-one with you and
No, I
somebody
got
else
you.
in the,
All right, so one of my concerns is like teenage kids.
right?
How do you get to discipline them? I mean, how do they discipline to where they go stay in front of that computer and get the assignments? I mean, what is that? They're old enough to stay at home, of course, but you gotta have some way of
Right.
monitoring progress, right?
Absolutely.
So that's one of the questions I had is, so would they be required to log in at, 8 a.m. and?
That information will be coming out, and she will address that in a few minutes. Any other?
I'm a parent, y'all.
Yeah.
So, and I'm an old parent, so, look, my kids mean the world to me.
And back to her first slide, this is going to be a fluid motion where they're trying to react just like that. I have, 5 pages of questions, and we're going to get through all of them.
I got you. All right, thank y'all very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, I'm starting in here with Mr. Mingus.
Well, one thing you did not mention at all was cafeteria and feeding breakfast and lunch. I know that we can actually feed kids in the classroom if we set it up that way, but you didn't say anything about that, so I think if you could elaborate on that a
It's
little
going to be
bit.
in our document that we release later in the week, and we met yesterday, Monday, yesterday, again, and I know Ms. Kendra's working on that plan, and it will be spelled out in the detailed document. And in some situations, it could be that students are eating breakfast in the classroom, or because we have to social distance and we have to keep units separated. So she and her team is working that out, and we're going to include that on the document that we're going to put on our website by the end of the week. So we don't know all those details. I mean, I don't know all those yet.
Yeah, okay. The other thing that I was going back to the teachers' commitment and requirements for homeschool or for 7 through 12, or if you have blended learning. Well, the teacher, in other words, our question is, I'm teaching kids in the classroom, I'm teaching kids at home, I'm wiping the desk down, I'm wiping the door frames down, when am I teaching? It's just going to be a lot of questions, and I think the main thing, if you could just answer tonight, is are the teachers going to be required to check in every day with the kid who is at home on virtual, or in the morning or the afternoon every day for the same kid, or is there any kind of something you could just kind of let them know now?
Right. So if it's 7 through 12, which most of the 7 through 12, they have multiple teachers, right? So they have at least 7 teachers throughout the day. So what the state is recommending, which we agree with this, is that a teacher, and each day maybe it's a different teacher, but there has to be some coordination, but each teacher should, reach out to a class of students. So obviously, a teacher can't talk to and reach out to 100 kids, right? That's impossible. So what we did in the spring was that basically you took your homeroom class and you was the connector to your homeroom class. So I would imagine that at the school level, teachers would have to coordinate, the classes that they're staying in touch with and rotate them around, so that I'm not the only one talking to these students every day or communicating with them every day. So that's something that I think has to be worked out. But, there's no way that a teacher can contact all the students if they're departmentalized and have a conversation with them every day, individually.
Well, like for high school, they may have 150 kids throughout the day, but for elementary, if they have a classroom and some of their children are at home Monday, Tuesday, and they're in school, the same child may be in school Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, if they're not in school on Monday and Tuesday, will they be required to reach out to that 30 classroom, like a second grade teacher? If her kids are at home blended, So that day, will they have to reach out to the 20 kids that maybe didn't come to school that day?
So part of that answer, I mean, really the answer depends upon how many kids are signed up at that school that are online or full virtual. And so it's going to depend on the numbers because, you know, you could have, for instance, if you've got 5 first grade teachers or second grade teachers, and they're all teaching this reading, you know, you could have one of those like doing the virtual kids at that school because there may be only, you know, 5 of them or 6. On the other hand, if you've got, you know, a lot more, that might determine how many you're doing or how many addressing those kids. So it's going to depend on the numbers of kids that are enrolled in the virtual at the school and, you know, and working out the details of who's servicing those kids. So for instance, at a junior high, I'm going to use this example, where, you know, you have our middle school, you have 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th, and you have 4 math teachers, or 6 math teachers. You know, you may have one of those teachers have a class period where they're doing all the virtual kids at math at that school. So that would be a solution on how you would work that. So it depends on the school configuration of grades, how many teachers you have. Not all of those math teachers need to be doing virtual.
Okay,
Just need one.
but that's what the
Yeah.
question was.
And they would have a class period that would be virtual, for virtual students, if there's enough of them to do that, yeah.
Okay, that's good.
Okay?
Question going with what she's asking. Okay, to make it clear, kindergarten through 6th grade, we're not going to do any virtual during this phase 2?
Pre-K through 6th grade.
No
Will
virtual?
be in our buildings.
We're not going to offer that at all?
With a real teacher,
Okay, we're not going to offer virtual at all?
right, not in
Okay,
phase 2.
So that takes care of, until we get out of this phase, we won't have to worry about what she's talking about?
Right. Phase 1, if we have to go to phase 1, that means no one's at school.
Right, but if we stay in
Yeah.
phase 2, they're all going to be in-house?
Pre-K through 6.
Okay.
To start, and we're hoping to fold in a few other grades.
Oh, well, it says on your thing, regardless of phase, TPSS offers blended and virtual models.
Yeah, I think what Ms. Dominguez is talking about is that if you're at a school and you choose a virtual mod, if you
That's what I'm asking.
Like,
Are we going to offer that still?
Yes. If there's a parent who is hesitant about sending their child to school because of the pandemic, they have the option of just going virtual. And they can do that regardless of the phase we're in.
Okay, that's what I wanted to make clear, because I don't think everybody was understanding that. I think people were understanding if they were in phase 2, they had to go to the schoolhouse.
The parents have the option in any phase, if they don't feel comfortable, for whatever reason, of sending their child to school during this pandemic, they have the virtual option.
Okay.
Any grade.
Ms. Janice?
Superintendent, this was a question raised to me. I know that transportation, like you said, is, you know, one of our biggest challenges. And in the rural area, what they're saying is that it's hard. Some of them do have transportation, but they don't have the means to be able to transport. Have there been any considerations for mile reimbursement to parents?
We have not discussed that. You know, I think that's something we can discuss. I really don't have an answer tonight for that because we haven't talked about it and the pros and cons of that. And of course, it's a cost factor as well. So I guess that's something we need to come back to the table and discuss.
Mr. Bush?
Yes, Cindy, could you go back to this slide?
Sure.
Stilly, phase 2, of course, the top questions I've been getting is, do we wear masks? I mean, I've been hearing that for months. On 7 through 12, where it says we will reevaluate 7 and 12 model after Labor Day. Say we say we reevaluate after Labor Day.
Yeah.
Say we're in phase 3. Why wouldn't we, because the plans have changed, at phase 3, 9 to 12, the bottom sentence, 9 to 12 students will rotate on an AB schedule. Will we ever reevaluate that
Yes.
and let them
Well,
all go back?
hopefully we'll move out of that. And on the press release that we're putting out tonight, Mr. Bush, it says it's at a minimum. So that means that the students, the A group would come 2 days a week and the B group would come 2 days a week, but it says at minimum. So that's the minimum, but our goal is always to reevaluate and continually reevaluate to see if we can get all the kids on the campuses.
What will we use when we reevaluate Labor Day as a date like we do in phase 2? Say we're in phase 3 in 2 weeks. So
Right.
we'll do AB schedule.
Well, remember, all of this is really hanging on transportation.
Gotcha.
So regardless, we would need to do bus counts, not bus counts, but we would have to count how many students are on the bus so that we're within the 50%. In Labor Day, if we're in phase 3, in August, then at Labor Day, we would look to see if we have enough seats that we can, or we have another solution that we could fold in the rest of those kids for 5 days a week at school.
Okay. What if the ones that, I don't know, I'm still not quite sure, because, so the whole thing is based on transportation, I understand that, but of course, a lot of kids drive to school and so forth in 9th to 12th grade. So you're telling me there's a possibility that 9 to 12 students will rotate on an AB schedule based on days assigned by school the whole school year because of transportation issues, even though we're better in the virus or
Well, in phase 3, the limitations on the bus, the requirements is you can only have 75% capacity. So we would have to, again, count the students on the bus to make sure, and as I think you just said, that, some of your high school students drive to school. So once we do those counts and we find out actually how many students are on the bus, we can make educated decisions about who we can add on the buses. You see what I'm saying?
True.
There's only so much room on the bus.
Is there a phase 4? and
To be post-phase 3.
Yeah. I think phase 4 is, maybe we're back to normal.
Who puts us in that phase,
It
right?
can't get here fast enough.
Yes. I think phase 4 is 100% capacity on the
Who puts
bus.
us in that phase? And Mr. President, I have one more question for everyone to hear this. We will never vote on whether we have athletics or not. That's not our call. That's a LHSAA or a Bessie board, because I've been getting that thing, like, do not cancel
Yes.
athletics. That has nothing to do with us. It's a Bessie, Louisiana Department of Education, or federal, whatever, and that's just what it'll be handed down
Louisiana
to
High
us what we
School
have to do.
Association, yeah.
And since I mentioned that, and I'm sure it's in the packet, we can bring it, if we're in phase 2 and we start this, we do not play contact sports.
No contact.
Does everybody understand that?
High School
Okay.
Association.
And that also will be in this outline. Our people know that, but we're
Yeah,
gonna.
we know it, and it's not us doing it, so I want to bring that out again. We did not cancel football season if we're still in phase 2. The Tangipahoa Parish School Board did
No,
not
that's a
cancel.
decision that's higher than us.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question, Ms. Dilly. Will there be a nurse at every school that'll be in charge of monitoring the students that are sick until they're picked up by the parents?
So we talked about this in our staff meeting, and, since we'll be starting school with our pre-K through 6 in schools, we're going to utilize, and I've asked Ms. Varna to look at our nurses and to look to see if we have coverage in phase 2, like what would be the plan for nurse coverage? Because it may be that nurses have to shift where they normally are. What would be the plan for phase 2 and phase 3? Obviously, we don't have enough nurses, and we don't, to hire more means more money. And I think we looked at hiring I don't know how many thousands of dollars, it was a lot. So that impacts the budget. But, we think that, and I've asked Ms. Varna to look at the plan on how we can use existing nurses in phase 2 to shift around so that we make sure we have coverage at our schools to help with the sick rooms and to monitor symptoms with sick kids and stuff like that.
One thing that was suggested, and you and I talked about this earlier this week, was that the bus drivers, why put them on the bus, have them go to school and infect the whole bus? The problem with that being is the bus driver cannot take the temperatures, I can't do this, the bus drivers cannot take temperatures due to the fact that they're on side of the road, and it would cause very much hazard with them being parked on side of the road. You might have 7 to 10 kids that you're picking up on one bus stop. She can't sit there and take every kid's temperature, put it down. Buses, they go around buses as it is now. They're not going to wait for 7 kids to get their temperature tested, so they're going to have to wait till they get to the school in order to be tested and having their temperature taken then. So somebody did suggest that. Also,
And
with the...
I just would insert there that that was not me that decided that or anybody in this room, but there was a committee, a resilient committee that had superintendents, educators, all represented, and also the Department of Transportation was on that committee. And they tossed this around, and it was a big conversation, probably for a long time. And at the end of the conversation, it was agreed upon that it's too big of a risk to have a bus on a highway, a main highway, especially with, some stops you might pick up 15 students. And you're sitting there trying to check their temperatures, you got kids on the bus, and people do pass the buses with the lights on, just FYI. So it's really a dangerous situation. So it's not recommended at the pickup of the buses.
Also, some questions that I've had. We're going to do breakfast and lunch. So breakfast may be in the classroom, it may be in the cafeteria. Does that mean all teachers are going to have to report for duty as they were doing duty in the morning, since they're going to have to watch all of these kids?
So when the kids get off the bus or they get out of the carpool, they're going to need to go straight to the classroom because they can't congregate, together. They can't sit in the hallway, side by side, unless they can social distance them some kind of way, which they can't be mixed with other kids, other groups. They have to be within their group. So, that's something that may have to happen.
So all teachers would have to basically be on bus duty every morning?
We're in a pandemic. This is not a normal situation, especially in phase 2. And I think we're all going to have to chip in and just try to get through this.
Right.
Yeah.
The internet is down again? They're saying they got kicked offline?
All night.
Well,
Okay, and one more question with teachers that are doing the virtual. You explained it if they were doing virtual teaching. They have their students in their classroom, and they may have 3 that are virtual. So are they going to have to do this after hours, or are they going to do this during school time?
No after hours. At least that's my understanding. If they have only 3 at a school, then, there may be situations where we have a person at the district, or a teacher that does like all the first graders in the district,
Gotcha.
Depending on it depends on the numbers.
Right.
But we don't expect teachers to stay after school and do virtual for no extra money.
So they just need to understand, until we get our numbers in and we know who's going
Yes.
virtual, we don't have the answers to these questions until we see how many numbers of
It's gonna
students are going to
depend
do
on our
that.
numbers,
Right.
How many we have. And it would make sense, I think, if you have somebody if you only have, let's just use for example, you have, 10 first graders in the whole parish, then you just need a first grade teacher to facilitate the learning. So I think we have to use the common sense of numbers and not having 5 people teaching 10 kids virtually. So that will depend on the numbers.
one thing I'd like to say before we move on is I've got a great list here that was submitted to me, and a great number of text messages that were all good questions. And like you described them earlier, it's kind of like the questions in the weeds or the devil's in the details. We know this is a changing environment. We know that this plan is going to be moving forward with a lot of adjustments. I'm just going to opt out of asking all these different questions by saying this. If I can give this to you,
Yes.
can we get this online in a facts and question page so that teachers and people that want to text, I will forward this to the administration. We will get these we have a lot of good professional people that are asking very good questions. And I think the best way to get these is get them online in front of people so that all the teachers, all the parents can look at these individual questions and give you a chance to really get a good answer in front of them.
Yeah. And, just to add to that, Mr. President, is that, it's sort of like layers here. So the first thing that had to happen was this. We had to let people know, what's the plan? What are we going to do? And then, we produce a detailed document, which we post on our website. We send to everyone on all the what ifs, what ifs, what ifs. Then we put out the next layer, which is the frequently, questions. What if this happens, or what about this? And then we can actually add to this document. It's electronic. We can update it, and we can have frequently asked, because there may be some valid, really good questions that we didn't even think about. So we need to be able to update this as well on our website, which is why we want to, post it electronically so that we can update it throughout.
And we knew there would be a lot of input tonight because
Yeah.
this is something that everybody is sitting at the edge of their table waiting to hear, how are we going to do school next month?
Yeah.
So,
And I'll tell you this, just in closing. I was reading the National Pediatric article on reopening school, and we probably need to post that. And I thought it was a really great read. It was simple. It didn't take a lot of time, and it was very logical, very logical. And it says that, the best place for our students is in the school buildings, where we talk about the mental health of our children, the mental health of our adults. I have, 6 grandchildren. I mean, they don't talk about it a lot, but I think they do worry and they think about it. And I think that the best thing we can do as a loving adult community here in Tangipahoa is get them back in school. And I just want the public to know, and I want the board to know, that we will go to whatever length we need to go to try to get them back in our buildings, because, I don't have to tell you that, some of the environments that our children are in, they're not getting meals, isolation, and, you have to look at the risks, but you also have to look at what could happen if we don't get them back in our buildings. What happens to that child? And so, I just would ask everyone, from our teachers to our support staff and everyone. It may mean that I'm a bus driver and maybe I have to pick up elementary kids, and I've never picked I've only drove a high school route. Maybe it means I have to get there a little early my partner teacher and I help watch each other's classes, and maybe that I have to get there a little early sometimes to help out. We just need to pitch in, and we need to get through this together. And I'll go back to the opening slide, which is stronger together. And we need to come together, and we need to come together for our kids, and we need to make this work. And I know that we're all going to do that, and we all have lots of questions, and trust me, I lay in bed at night thinking of a million questions. But we'll work through it. We have a month. Everybody knows the plan. We have a month to work through all the what ifs. But we are stronger together, and we will get through this together. So I just appreciate everyone and all the families at home and all of our teachers and all of our employees that have been waiting for the plan. And of course, all of our team that's been involved with, talking this through at all of our meetings. So I just appreciate everyone's patience.
Absolutely.
Like Mr. Bush said earlier, don't believe things you see on social media. We've been through a lot, the Tangipahoa Parish School Board, since we took office. Cyber attack, now this. This lady does not rest. Do not think that she is not putting your children first. Her staff here at the central office, they're doing everything to make sure that the children come first. that our employees come first. That's what we're all here to think about and to talk about. A lot of people were quick to say, when we made decisions about graduation, oh, y'all jumped on that. Why did y'all do that so fast? Well, now we're waiting to last to make this decision. Livingston's already put theirs out. St. Tammany's put theirs out already. We're waiting to last to make sure that we do things the right way. We don't jump on to conclusions, and we don't jump on things right away. We think things out, and I want to commend you and the central office, because I know y'all do not sleep. Y'all think about this 24/7.
It's our feedback up, sound room. Hey, guys? Okay.
Christie, you want to change your mind?
Mr. Minguez, you were being very patient. You had something
Well,
else?
I was just going to, talking about social distancing in the classroom, but, we didn't discuss at all about our physical education classes, dressing room, are they going to dress out? That's a whole nother section that
Yeah.
has not been discussed either.
And those instructions are going to be coming in email about PE and about dressing out stuff.
And all the welding and shop classes that you can't
Yes.
actually physically do. Do you still
Right.
get credit for that?
Like I said, there's going to be a lot of details that are going to be coming out in emails to the employees, as well as on the website with the facts and questions page. So I encourage the employees, if you have questions, send them, and let's submit them, and let's get it in front so everybody can see it at one time. Okay? Any other thoughts on that? I know it was a lot. Mr. Moore?
Yeah, I would just like to say, and this is something this is something that I've said even at the beginning of the school year, that one of the biggest problems that we probably face is hopelessness and despair. This is only going to be until we get through this, and we will get through it. So, I don't want anyone to sink into the mindset of thinking that we're going into something that we're going to stay in. We are working on it. Even when we get to the point where we have a plan, it's going to be ongoing. It's going to be amended. We're going to be learning and improving, making changes. So I would just say stay hopeful. Stay hopeful the whole time.
Absolutely. All right, board member comments? I know we've said a lot already, so it may be short, but Ms. Rose, nothing? Mr. Westmoreland?
All I'm going to say is trial and error, and I know we're going to be resilient, and we're going to make this. We're going to get back to what I believe to be normal, and our children are always going to be first.
Thank you. Mr. Moore? Ms. Robin?
I'm good.
Mr. Bush?
I'll say going on Facebook, if you're in this community, and ragging us or bashing us is doing zero good whatsoever. We are mandated by the federal government and the state government and the CDC to do certain things, and we just cannot help that. So let's be together and patient and just wait. And I can tell you again, and I like to do my comments like this, Mr. President, just wait, tomorrow it's all going to change. So let's just get ready and be flexible. We're all in this together. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Richards. Then last, I'll just say that I do appreciate the flexibility of our employees, the flexibility of our parents, the hard work of our administration. We will get to the end of this as soon as possible, and as soon as we can allow things to happen, believe me, we will, because that's what we want. We want a normal school year, if we can ever figure out what that is again. Superintendent, anything else? Okay. Item 5, we have, let's see, 4 items for executive sessions, so.
3.
3 items.
I'm sorry, 3 items for executive session, so, Mr. Westmoreland, if you don't mind, would you make a motion?
Yes, I move to enter into executive session to discuss the cases of Tyranny Banks on behalf of Destiny Carter versus TPSS, Patricia Edwards versus TPSB, and the superintendent's evaluation.
Okay. Any questions?
Do I need a
Any
second?
opposition?
Second.
We have a motion, a second. No opposition? Motion carries. Thank you for participating, for all those that came out.
Channel 17, proudly serving the Florida parishes.
Is back in order. I will entertain a motion
On executive session 5B and C, we're going to accept the recommendation of council in those matters.
Okay, we have a
That's my
motion.
Second.
We have a motion from Mr. Westerland, second from Mr. Mingus to accept our council's recommendations. Any questions? Any opposed? Hearing no opposition, motion carries by unanimous. We have no public input.
What about-
Anything else?
What about Patricia Edwards? Was that,
Yeah, that's section C.
okay, I didn't hear that.
Yes,
Okay.
we're accepting council's recommendations.
Okay.
Okay, any other things, anything else? If not, meeting adjourned.